My assistant here, Amelia, just asked me, why does Vietnam Veterans Boulevard cross over Gallatin Road twice near Saundersville? That's a very good question. And it really goes back to how the road was created and how it was conceptualized in the 1960s and 1970s. In the 1960s and early 1970s, Hendersonville was growing at a rate of one household per day. A lot of people were moving here. At the time, the way that commuters got from Hendersonville to Nashville was you just traveled westward down Gallatin Road to where Rivergate Parkway is now, and you turned right, and then you got to I-65 from there. As you traveled west on Gallatin Road and more cars joined the commute from those side streets, the bottleneck got worse. And so when you got into Goodlettsville and you tried to and you had more lights, you ended up spending more time, and then you had to turn right to get on I-65. It was a huge, huge problem. At the same time, you had businesses there that were completely having a hard time luring customers in because of just the understanding of how much traffic was there and just sort of the fear of getting stuck in traffic there. So the idea was to build a bypass around Hendersonville to allow some of that traffic to completely bypass Hendersonville and not have to get on Gallatin Road. The initial problem with that, though, was that engineers and state officials quickly understood that if all you did was got people around Hendersonville, if you took them from Gallatin Road, went around Hendersonville, back to Gallatin Road, you'd really just be replacing the bottleneck. Instead of there being a bottleneck at Goodlettsville, there would be a bottleneck wherever this west end of the bypass was connected. So the solution to that was to have a bypass and then have a connector to I-65. So, and that's essentially what was eventually built. Was you have the bypass around Hendersonville that goes from Saundersville Road up to the business spur on the western side of town, and then you also have the connector to I-65, and that's what really we think of as the bypass today. The first phase of that was built, I want to say it was finished in 1984, 1985, and that connected New Shackle Island Road to Calendar Lane. Calendar Lane is now Indian Lake Boulevard, and it was such a small portion and such sort of a useless portion that I remember when I was in high school and ran cross country, that's where we trained. We actually trained on the first phase of the bypass because there was so little traffic there. In fact, there was some politician that made the comment that it was a road that starts nowhere and goes no place, and it was just that little section right there. Well, as the later phases came into being and the connection to I-65 became an incredibly useful road and a very important road. As it was being built, though, nobody really knew where the western end of it would actually connect. The eastern end was already decided. It would connect Saundersville Road, crossing over Gallatin Road to merge onto Gallatin Road. The western end, because the whole project took so long and development continued, really became a problem, and that it was eventually connected to I-65 where it is now. The irony of that whole thing was that by crossing the eastern end, which had been sited and was much easier to determine, really became the problem. Years later, in the 80s and 90s, when there really became a greater need for Vietnam Veterans Boulevard to continue through the rest of the county and head north, the problem was that the bypass was on the southern side of Gallatin Road, where all the development was. And so in order to get the road back on the northern side of Gallatin Road and be more useful, it had to cross back over Gallatin Road a second time. So that's why we have this strange curve. If you're on Vietnam Veterans Boulevard heading east, and you're heading toward Gallatin, you cross over Gallatin Road and then cross back over Gallatin Road a second time. It's a very good question, Amelia. Thank you. Let's see how we did.